This conference will now be recorded.
Hey, I hope my voice is clear and you guys are able to see my screen.
Yes, we can see yours.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Raj. Right, so I think this is your first class, right? Or Friday you attended
No,
this
this is my
class
first class actually.
for Raj. Okay, what about others?
Same with me. This is my first class, Santosh.
Okay, Shantash. I think Trivin is there, Hitesh is there. Yeah, just then what we'll do today, I will try to give an overview on this DevOps. But since you guys are not attending the demo, right? We'll go and see what we are going to do in the DevOps and what is the tool stack. Right? We'll try to go in over. Then from tomorrow onwards, right? We'll try to start our actual classes. I hope it works for us, right? So when we talk about this DevOps, right? We are going to work for automations. So usually people will call dev plus ops. This is the old definition, like developing of operations like that. But actually, right, it is not like something. DevOps is a process, so it is not particularly to one area. You will develop and automate the areas. So it is a process. We are going to automate right different areas. So when I say different areas, so the major part for the DevOps engineers is right build and deploy, and then right your infrastructure. Then our right the other one is monitoring. These are the three pieces important for us. So whenever right, so it's depends on the project, right? If the project is huge and we have a good amount of team, like in our DevOps side, we have more than 10 people, then we are going to right split the areas. Like three will work on the build and deploy, three will work on the infrastructure like that. If the project is small and we have hardly 4 to 5 members of DevOps team, then everyone is going to be contribute in each area, right? We all together working on all the three areas, right? So when it comes to right this build and deployment process, right? So we are going to create the artifacts for the new change in the sense that whenever the developers right develop the code, so then the code we will take it and we'll go for certain validations, right? Like here, code checkout, right? Then run the unit test cases, then right check the code quality, then create the artifact, then store the artifact, right? So then deploy the artifact into environments. Like the environments are nothing but dev, then QA, UAT, prod, like that. Right. So in our build and deployment, so we are going to create a process. We are going to create a process with different steps like this. Right. So now this is my first step. Whenever, right, the code is ready from the developer side, we'll take the code. Then the second step, right, we are going to run the test cases. The test cases are going to provide by the development team. So once, right, the test cases are passed, right, they are passed, then we'll go for the code quality checking. Right, we have to make sure the code is properly developed and it has a good quality. So then we'll go for the artifact creation. So artifacts are nothing but, right, converting the code. So if I receive a code like login as an example .java, so then here, right, we are going to convert into login.war file. Right? So Java code will be converted as jar files, war files like that. Right? So .NET code will be converted as .dlls, .exes like that, right? We are going to convert that code. So then after the converted code, we are going to store them. So then the stored artifact will be deployed into different environments. Right? So the environments, right, we are going to call as like a dev environment, sandbox environment. Like we are based on the project, we are going to maintain different environments. Right. So usually, right, you will see the dev, QA, UAT, production like that. So the environments are nothing but a group of servers. Right? You are going to have group of servers. On the servers, will deploy the code. And then, right, the teams. So here the teams, whatever the teams are there, they will validate the code. So here when I say dev environment, developers are going to use that environment to validate the code. Whatever the code that they develop, they are going to test the code, like validate the code on this dev environment. If they're satisfied, right, then it will go for QA, quality. So for that, testing team will use, right? The testing team will use the QA team and they will test the code and they will, right, create the test cases, and the test cases they are going to trigger against this code, and they will see any bugs are there. If any bugs are there, they will array, they will raise the bugs and assign back to the developers. If there are no bugs, no issues, then they will give the sign off. Once we got the sign off, then from the QA to, right, we will deploy into the UAT. So this environment, right, usually by client team. So from the client side, the team will use this UAT environment and they will test the code. Right. If any issues, again, they will raise it. If no issues, sign off. So once we got the sign off, right, then finally it will go to the live. Like we are the people, the end users, going to use the application. Right. So now here, the first part for the DevOps engineers, build and deployment. Right. So under this build and deployment, right, we are going to have certain stages like this. Right. So now how we are going to build this process? Right. In our market, right, there are plenty of tools are available for this build and deployment. So, right, number of tools. Like suppose if I'm going to take GitHub, right, the version control tool GitHub, they are providing GitHub Actions. GitHub Actions is our build and deployment. If I take, right, suppose our AWS. So the AWS cloud, if I take the AWS cloud, they are providing AWS build tools, like developer tools, AWS code build, code deploy like that. If I take Azure, they are providing Azure Devops. Likewise, the cloud or the tools like Bitbucket. If I take the Bitbucket, Bitbucket is providing Bitbucket pipelines. Right. So likewise, whatever the tools or cloud we are using, so they are providing this build and deployment as a service, so that you can easily create this process. But the thing is, right, they are all paid. Right. So now the customer, right, whatever the work, right, is going to be given by the customer. There are few are there, like they are going to interest to go with the tools, like they are go with, they are working with the pay the rent. There are like few are will be there, they are not interested to put some amount for this build and deployment. They don't want to spend it. Right. So like right, we are going to see, right, different types of customers. If they are okay to spend the some amount, then we can go and, right, like inform them, like, or advise them, like these are the tools which we can use it. If they are not interested, right, then you are going to go with the free, the open source tools. right? So right here, so now this process can be implemented by open source or the paid ones. The final concept is right, open source or the paid ones, right? So from the open source, right, because plenty of projects, the number of projects, right, you will see on the open source side. Like there are few you are going to see on the paid side, right? So from the open source side, how to create this build and deployment process. So there, right, for each step, what are the steps we discussed? For each step, right, we have a separate tools are available, like Git, right, code checkout. We can use Git, a tool called Git. It is one of the popular version control tool right now in the market. Then test cases running. So if it is a Java, right, then we can use Maven is the build tool. Maven is the build tool. So now here, for every language, we are going to have a separate build tools. Like for the Java, we can have Maven and like that. For .NET, right, MS build, .NET dot build, like that. For Python, PyBuilder, like that, right. For every language, we are going to have a separate build tool based on the project, whatever we are working, right. So like it is developed with the .NET, then I will use MS build. If it is developed with the Java, then I will use Maven. So likewise, right, we are going to pick the corresponding build tools. What is the purpose of build tool? They will convert the code. Whatever the code you will receive, that code will be converted as artifacts. So now from the Java side, this guy Maven will do like multiple things for us. One is the Maven can validate, nothing but can run the test cases for us. You don't need to have a separate tool to run the test cases, right? So now the test cases we are going to run with Maven. Then code quality checking, right? To check the code quality, we are going to use Sonar Cube. So to check the code quality, then artifact creation. Again, the build tool comes in the picture, like Maven. Right? Basically, right, the build tool purpose is creation of artifact. Now storing the artifact, right? So like here, Nexus we can use to store the artifacts, right? So now deploying the code into the environments, right? So now here to deploy the code into the environment, we can use shell scripts or we can use Ansible or we can use the plugins, right? What the plugins we'll discuss, right? We have different tools or different methods are there to deploy the code into the environments, right? So now here, who will run this entire process? Like by using Git, check out the code, by using Maven, run the test cases, by using the Sonar Cube, right? Code quality checking. Who will do this for us? So how we are going to use these tools in our process? That's what here we are going to have one main tool called Jenkins. Now under the Jenkins, we are going to create a job or jobs. So inside the jobs, we are going to create these steps, and each step is going to use a separate tool, right? So now those tools we are going to integrate with the Jenkins. So now that's why Jenkins is integration tool. It will integrate with other tools to right to work for your requirement, whatever the requirement we are going to have. So right, so now whatever the build and deployment process you want to set up. So now the main tool will be the Jenkins. Then inside the Jenkins, we are going to create the jobs. The jobs are nothing but right this set of tasks. Now each task can have their own tool. Those tools can be integrated with the Jenkins and we can run the process, right? So basically, right, for build and deployment, right, we'll call the Jenkins, or the integration tool we are going to call the Jenkins. Like it, the Jenkins, right, can do a lot of things, not only build and deployment, we can do a lot of things with the Jenkins, and we will discuss, we'll see, right, in our actual classes, right? So now by using, these are all the open source tools, these are all the open source tools. By using these open tools, right, open source tools, we can create the build and deployment process, right? So then the second piece is infrastructure. So now what is this infrastructure, right? What we'll do with the infrastructure, right? So now when I say like environments, right? So dev environment, QA, UAT, production, like they're all the environments. The environments are going to have bunch of or group of servers. The servers can your web servers or backend servers like app servers or the DB servers, database servers, like that, right? You can have different types of servers, the missions, and also, right, the Jenkins, also a mission. We are going to run on a mission like Sonar Cube. We are going to run on a mission like Nexus. We are going to run on a mission like we are going to have, right, different types of, right, applications, different types of services we are going to work. Now, these are all comes under infrastructure, right? So now basically, right, when you are going to talk about this infrastructure, right, so there creation of servers, right? So creation of servers. So right, so what type of server you want to create, right? You want to create a web server, or you want to create an app server, or you want to create a database servers, like that, right? So now apart from the servers creation, right, so we have to make sure your application is always highly available, right? So like high availability, like for that load balancers, right? To maintain the application is always highly available, and the application, right, enough to handle the load, right? So now I have created a one server. On the server my application is running, right? So now the server capacity, as an example, the server capacity is, it can handle 1,000 requests per second, right? So now we have launched an offer. Now by the offer, right, during the offer time, now the request 1,000 will become 2,000 per second. Now is that server can handle? No, it cannot handle. Now what we need to do, we have to put some extra configuration so that it can handle 2,000 requests, means add one more server, right? So now how you will come to know, right, this time I need to add one more server, right? These are all the challenges. So now we have to set up some kind of automation, so like highly scalable, high availability, high scalability, in the sense whenever the load is increasing, automatically, right, it has to be scaled up, the servers. Whenever the load is decreased, then scale it, right, remove the load, right? So like that, auto scaling. Right, so likewise, right here, the storage is one of the important for us, right? Like user storage, user data storage, like customers data, like, right, whenever, right, we are going to go for any application, right, like Flipkart, Amazon, you are going to see lot of images, right? The images storage, like, right, videos. When I go with the Netflix or some website, right, you will see the videos, the movies, right? So like the storage, like storing the static content, like, right, images, videos, are storing the dynamic content, like user data, the customer data, patient data, employees data, like that, right? So different types of storages, right? So like here, the storing of static content, right, we can work with, right, here, right, S3 service, like if I'm going to talk about from the cloud side, right? So like our storage, not forget about the cloud storage. The storage can be, right, static and dynamic, right? So then security, right? So now whatever the servers or whatever the services you are going to use for your application, security is one of the important thing for us, right? So how we are going to provide the security, right? So likewise, so when we are going to talk about the infrastructure, right, so we have to make sure all these things we are taking care: servers, load balancers, auto scalings, like high availability, high scalability, storage, security, and all the stuff. Now when you are maintaining this stuff, so how we are going to maintain it, right? So that's what important here, because, right, so in your project, right, you might work with 500 servers, 1,000 servers, like that. Now 500 servers, 1,000 servers is not a simple thing to maintain them, So right, we have to have a kind of automation. So with the automation, right, we are going to maintain all this stuff. Right, any change, it should be done in matter of minutes on the group of servers. Like it can be 100 servers, 2000 servers, like that. Right. So likewise, you have to set up the process. Right. So there now, right, earlier we are going to use virtual machines, physical servers. Now the cloud came into the picture. Right. So now by using the cloud, now the entire infrastructure can be maintained easily. Right. So now we have different types of clouds are available in the market, like AWS, Azure, Google, IBM, Bluemix, like that, right? We have different clouds are available. Now, out of all the clouds, right, AWS is holding majority of the share, like 60 to 70% AWS. So then your Azure, then your Google, like that. So all the clouds are going to offer the same services called, right, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. Right? Infra, whatever we discussed just now, right? Like servers, load balancers, auto scaling, they all comes under infrastructure. That's a platform. You want to develop something, you need a platform, right? So they're offering platforms as a services. You don't need to purchase anything. You can take the rent and you can develop your own. Right? Softwares, ready-made softwares will be available. You can take them and you can use them on a rental basis. Right. So as a DevOps engineer, right, which service we need? Infrastructure as service. It's AWS cloud or Azure cloud or some other cloud. So now we are going to use the AWS or Azure or Google or whatever the cloud services to build the infrastructure. Right. Again, the building of infrastructure by using again, right, automated way. Right. So now here the cloud we are going to use, and with the help of a tool called Terraform. With the help of a tool called Terraform, we are going to build the infrastructure, right? So it can be anything in my infrastructure. It can be, suppose I want to set up the security. So right, I will build the infrastructure of the security by using the Terraform and the cloud services. Right. So then the last piece is, right, monitoring. It is again one of the important thing for us. So what are the servers we are going to create? What are the applications we are going to run on the servers, right? We have to monitor them so that at any point of time, right, if the application is down or the servers are down, right, we should be notified so that, right, we can go and immediately work with the issue. Right. So for that, right, so we have the cloud provider service called CloudWatch. So this is, right, one of the monitoring service from the cloud side, so that, right, we can monitor our servers and everything. So like here, right, Prometheus is one of the monitoring tool to monitor our microservices, right? So then what is called our applications. Then Grafana is one of, again, the monitoring tool from Kubernetes side, right? So now we are going to create the monitoring system for our servers and for our applications, so that, right, at any point of time, if any issues, right, they will alert us, right? So likewise, so we are going to use, right, so these set of tools, the tool stack, to create the automation process for our build and deployment, for our infrastructure and the monitoring, right? So when comes to again the build and deployment, right, when it comes to again the build and deployment, so here there are two types of applications we are going to work on, right? So one is monolithic application, and the second one is, right, microservices. And you will see, right, two types of applications, monolithic and the microservices, right? So like, right, monolithic in the sense the entire application is going to be packed, right? All the services are going to packed and you will be run on the server, right? So what is the drawback with the monolithic, right? So if any of the service has some issue, since we pack it as a one single entity, it will break down or it will bring down the entire application, right? If one of the service has issue, right? To overcome the issue, right? So because right, you should not bring down the application, right? At least the service should go down. Like suppose, right, I have the banking application. In my banking application, we have the services like credit card, debit card, right? Online banking like that. Suppose that credit card service has some issue, it should not bring down the entire banking application, right? Only the credit card service has to go down, right? So there the monolithic application is right completely reverse, like it's completely packed. If one is down, it's going to bring down the entire application. Now to overcome the challenge, right, microservices are introduced. So that right, so you are going to run each service individually, right? So instead of packing the entire application, right? So usually, right, this is something like we are going to pack a single entity where all the modules are going to run. Right, as an example, like my credit card, debit card service, online banking, mutual funds, like that, right? So then it will be my single entity like banking.war file. So I will deploy it as a single entity. If right, so now if any one has some issue, it is going to bring down the entire application. That's what our mono. Right. So now microservices are came in the picture to overcome this challenge. Right. So right, so now how the microservices are going to work? Now right, instead of right run as a single one entity, divide them into pieces like this. Divide them as the individual pieces, right? So now here, now I will run the credit card as a separate service and the debit card as a separate service, and right, then online banking as a separate service and the mutual funds will be a separate service, right? If one of the service has issue like mutual funds, let it be, right, that will be go down. The others will be up and running because they are running as an individual, not like a right, a group, a single entity. Right. So like right, so now the microservices, right now, whatever the applications we are seeing, they're all like the microservices. Right. So like here, if I take an example of Paytm website, right? See here as an example, you can see there are all the services of Paytm. Right. So now I log into the Paytm. Then when I want to go for a recharge, so I'm clicking on the recharge, then you can see the recharge of mobile bill. Right. So now I can log in from the login, right, from the main page. I can go to any service, or I can hit straight forward to the service. I don't require to log into the home page. So right, say website, then slash the service name. So that right, it will take me straight forward to the particular service. Like hitting the straight forward to the service. Right, in the back end, right, they're going to run as a services, individual pieces like this. Right, straight forward, you can hit them. Right. So like we right, we can see in our build and deployment, two types of applications you are going to create the process, right? Like monolithic and the microservices. Right. So when you are working with the monolithic build and deployment, right, we are going to use the different tool stack for our build and deployment, like Mono, Jenkins, Git, Maven, SonarQube, Nexus, then Ansible. Right. So whenever you are working for right monolithic application, so this is the tool stack we are going to use for the build and deployments. Right. Whenever right we are going to work for microservices. Right. So microservices. So then the tool stack is going to be changed, like Jenkins, Git, Maven, Sonar, then Docker, Kubernetes. Right. So that's a Docker and Kubernetes. Docker is for to run as a individual services, and Kubernetes to manage the services. Right. So like what kind of manage? Like we'll see everything in the practical. Right. So now For the build and deployment, based on the application type, the tool stack is going to be changed. Right? Right. So now as part of our course, we are going to cover all these tools, and we are going to create 3 projects. We are going to work on 3 projects. Right? The project one is for our monolithic build and deployment and microservice build and deployment. Right? Project one for monolithic, and our project two for microservices. Right? So like our real-time projects, we are going to set up everything from the scratch. From the scratch, we are going to set up like creation of servers, installation of required softwares, and building this automation. Right? Everything we are going to see from the scratch. Then the third project, infrastructure building, like environments creation. So like I want to have servers, load balancers, auto scaling, and deploying the code. Like everything you want to automate it, right? By using this great Terraform. Right. So like monitoring is the part, right? So you don't need to have separate project for that. It's a part in our project. So you don't need to have separate project for them for the monitoring. Right. So likewise, we are going to work for by using this tool stack. We are going to create 3 projects, one for monolithic application build and deployment, and the second one is microservices, Docker and Kubernetes project for the build and deployment, and third one, creation of our environments. Right. So this is about the high level overview. Already the demo we have taken on Friday. So for the new folks, I want to give an overview like what we are going to cover in our class and the tool stack and everything. Right. So now here from the AWS side, so now since it is a combination of DevOps with the AWS, from the AWS side, we are going to cover again 10 to 12 services. Let me share that details here. Right. So these are all the AWS services. Right. We are going to take the AWS cloud here, and we are going to cover all these services as part of our course from the AWS point of view. Right. So like infrastructure side, we are going to use these services. Right. So one more piece is there. So build and deployment, infrastructure, monitoring, and then we can have one more thing called logs management. That's called log streaming. So how effective, we are going to manage the logs, our server logs or application logs. So this also, we are going to see in our classes, log streaming. Right, guys. So any questions, anything on this high level overview? Like these are the AWS services and these are the tools we are going to cover. So almost right. So these can be 10 to 15, and these are like around 10 to 12, like more than 20 plus components we are going to cover in our course. And for each component, for each tool, I am going to provide a material to you like this. Right, as an example, if I go with the version control tool, so Git. So so every topic, what are the topics we are going to discuss? Every topic, explain here, and the instructions, if I run the command, what is the output you are going to get it. So with the screenshots. So I'm going to provide the material so that your practice will become easy, with the screen, so that when you run the command, what the output you will get it. So the material got prepared. Likewise for each for each tool, you are going to get the materials, whatever we are going to cover, right? And the course, will take minimum 2.5 months. So because we are going to cover more than 20 plus components like the tools and the services, and also we are going to cover it in detail, not like a high level overview. So whatever the topics, the automations, whatever we discuss, everything we are going to see practically, all the integrations, all the creations, and creating the process, we are going to see with the practical, and you will do it, right? So likewise we are going to cover the process. So that's why, right, we need at least 2.5 months to cover all these topics, right? So you can take it a course duration is 2.5 months, and right, and I think that the market of the DevOps is right. It's very good. So a lot of openings are there, even though it's a recent time. Still, right, the DevOps market is very good. Right, number of openings are there. Only the thing is, right, you have to gain the technical knowledge. You have to gain the DevOps technical knowledge with understanding. It's not like, right, I learned some Jenkins, so the Jenkins will do something, not something. What it will do, you have to understand it. What we can do with the Jenkins, like DevOps understanding is very very important, rather than just go and learn it and leave it. Right. So whatever the tools or the services or the process, basically, right, you are going to create a process. Finally, it can be different tool stack. Right. Today I am going to use the Jenkins. Tomorrow I will go for code builder. Right. But the process remain the same. So how we are going to set up, it depends on the tool. Once you got the knowledge and the process, we can work with any tool. It's right. It's not like I know the Jenkins. I don't know about the Bitbucket pipelines. Right. So that's not a big deal for us, because right, in the back end they will all follow the same process. So that understanding is required when you are trying to learn this DevOps. So because right, so like I mentioned, right, plenty of tools are there in the market. So today whatever the tools we are going to work, tomorrow that might be changed with some add-ons. Like the new tool will come with some add-ons, some extra features. We have to understand them and we have to use them. So once you have the right base knowledge on the tools, like on the process, we can work with any tools. It's not a big deal for us, right? So likewise, right, we'll go for these tools. Like we'll try to understand the process of the tools, the integration. Then we are going to work with the technical part, right, guys? So any questions from your end? So right, so from the prerequisite side, right, so we don't need to have any prerequisite like this thing is required, that thing is required. So every tool we are going to cover from the scratch, from the point zero. So you don't need to worry about, right, the any pre-knowledge is required. And from the right configuration side of the missions, like to practice our DevOps, right, the tools and everything. Again, you don't require to have any high-hand missions or something. Just we need a mission with internet. Right. So that right. So what we will do, right, because we are going to cover plenty of tools like this Jenkins, Git, MAM, like that. We need a separate missions for each tool. Like suppose I'm going to work with the Solar Cube, I need a mission. I want to work with the Jenkins, I need a mission. I want to work with the Nexus, I need a mission. I want to create a cluster, group of servers. So now we are going to integrate all of them. Right. So now here we are going to work with number of servers. Right. So that's why, right, we'll take the cloud, and from the cloud we are going to take the infra whatever you want, and we are going to practice them. So that's why, right, so you don't need to have any extra, like high configured machines, just a machine with internet, right? So from the cloud we are going to take all the infra and we are going to create and we are going to practice, then finally we are going to terminate them once our practice is done. Again, not to pay anything here. So it's a free account. We are going to create a free accounts and we are going to practice our DevOps, the entire DevOps. Right. So like prerequisites, nothing is required. Just right a mission with internet. From the subject, from the technical point of view, we are going to cover each tool with zero, like from the scratch. Right. So right. So that is what our plan is. Right. So from tomorrow, right, what we'll do. So tomorrow we'll see how to create a free account on our cloud. Then we'll see, right, how to create a missions, right? So because we are going to practice all the tools, right, on the Linux side. So in a real time, right, you will see the missions are with the Linux, right? So we are going to work with the Linux missions. So right, so now we need the Linux servers to practice our DevOps course. So right, so tomorrow what we'll do, right, we'll go and create a free account and we'll see how to create the servers. So then we'll try to understand some Linux important commands, right? So that, right, in our day-to-day life, right, when you are going to work with the Linux machines, you will not have the GUI. The GUI will be disabled. We have to work with the commands, right? So then what we'll do, we'll spend 2 to 3 days of time and we'll try to understand some important Linux commands so that right in your day-to-day life you can easily work with them. So then we'll jump into our first tool called right our version control tool, Git. Like right, we'll go one by one and we'll integrate the process. For the process, what are the tools are required and how to integrate them. Like right, we'll create a process. Once the tool stack is complete, then we'll go and see the project, right? The complete setup as a project. So right, so that is the plan. So any questions now?
No, Shankar, thank you.
Yeah, cool, Santosh. So anyone having any questions? Right. So finally, right. So everything we are going to provide, right? So the subject, the technical and the practical thing, right? The everything. Just your side is right. Spend some time and practice it. So daily practice it. And any questions, right? At any point of time, you guys can reach out to me, right? So for the clarification of your doubts by sending an email, right, with the details. So right, I will be clarifying immediately. Right. So then in the next day, right, before the class start or after the class, we can discuss the queries if you guys are having any. Right. So that's yeah. So we are planning to switch our careers. So DevOps is one of the right demanded job in the market apart from the data science, artificial intelligence, machine learning. One of the high paid tool job in the market is DevOps, right? So easily we can switch to the DevOps, but yes, with proper technical knowledge, right? So because right, so DevOps required a lot of tools knowledge. So then on right, we can easily work in the DevOps side, right? So our plan is to right cover all the tools with the proper technical knowledge. Yeah, fine. So if no questions, right? So we'll stop it for today, right? So tomorrow, right, as we discussed, we'll create a free account and we'll create the servers, right? Tomorrow we'll see creation of account and servers creation. So thank you then. See you
Thank
tomorrow.
you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks. Yeah, thanks all. Bye bye.